Chapter 648. If you say no, I will go back and accept Luo Nantian right now. From now on, I'll be the princess of Qi Yen country, and you'll be the commander of the Ink camp. We'll never meet again in life or death. If. Feng Haitang's voice was choked with shyness and determination. If you still like me a little, then hug me, kiss me, and tell me that you love me. Yan Haotian's body stiffened, his muscles twitching slightly. His eyes were scarlet red, and all that remained in his mind was Feng Haitang's captivating red lips and her fragrant breath. His mind buzzed, and everything faded from his consciousness, leaving only the deep love and desire buried in the bottom of his heart. Feng Haitang saw that he did not respond for a long time and thought that he had finally rejected her. Tears rolled down her cheeks, and she slowly let go of Yan Haotian's hand. Just as she was about to leave, her waist was suddenly grabbed by someone, and her red lips were sealed by a blazing hot breath. Feng Haitang suddenly opened her eyes wide, and then ecstasy surged in her heart. Hao Tian was kissing her. Hao Tian took the initiative to kiss her. Did this mean that Hao Tian was finally willing to accept her and be with her? Feng Haitang was wild with joy, and then completely immersed in the man's overbearing and passionate kiss. After a long while, Yan Haotian finally let go of Feng Haitang's red and swollen lips. Feng Haitang nestled in his arms, tightly hugging his thin waist, her face filled with joy and sweetness. However, the voice that came out of her mouth was low and seductive. Haotian, are you finally willing to accept me? I'm so happy. I think I'm the happiest woman in the world. A trace of annoyance and pain flashed across Yan Haotian's face. What was wrong with him? He clearly knew that he was not worthy of Haitang. He had clearly said that he would stay far away from her. Why couldn't he control himself? When he saw Luo Nantian carrying Haitang, he could not control the killing intent in his body. When he held Haitang and kissed her little mouth, he felt so painful and sweet. He wished that time would stop at that moment and never move forward. Didn't he love Haitang? How could he not love her? In this world, the person he loved the most was this silly woman. But he couldn't. He was a piece of trash, an ugly monster who didn't even have a tongue and couldn't speak. How could he be worthy of Haitang? If she were to be with him, how could Haitang's parents agree? Others would also laugh at Haitang, saying that she had married an ugly piece of trash. How could he allow the girl he loved to be hurt like that? Yan Haotian's heart felt like it was being torn apart and burned. He wanted to push Haitang away as decisively as before, but when he saw the happy smile on her face, it was as if his hands were filled with lead, unable to move. Boss! Boss! Guan Hu's shout can be heard from afar. Oh no, the old emperor of Qi Yen country sent troops to investigate the cause of Luo Qingfeng's death. 100,000 troops and horses came. Ai. Sigh. Sigh. I didn't see anything, boss. Miss Feng, I was wrong. You guys continue. I'll scram immediately. Scram immediately. Come back. Feng Haitang shouted, blushing. You. What did you just say? Where are they now? Chapter 649. But the old emperor sent a pretty boy over, saying that he's investigating the cause of Luo Qingfeng's death. If he finds out that it was Luo Nantian and Xiao Yu who rebelled, then the 100,000 troops will come. Feng Haitang frowned. 100,000 troops, even if it's a low-level martial artist, it's still very difficult to deal with. Let's go take a look, Haotian. Saying so, she naturally held Yan Haotian's hand. Yan Haotian struggled, wanting to break free, but Feng Haitang held him even tighter. Guan Hu on the side let out a wretched laugh. This made Yan Haotian's face burn. If not for his dark skin, he would have been embarrassed. But for some reason, there was an indescribable sweetness in his heart. He couldn't bear to let go of this soft little hand that was holding him. It's best not to let go for the rest of his life. When Feng Haitang and Yan Haotian rushed back to Luo Nanshan's palace, the Scarlet Flame's emperor's envoy had already arrived. Looking from afar, it was a young man dressed in white with a tall and straight figure. When Feng Haitang saw this young man's back, she felt that he was somewhat familiar. When he turned his head and saw his face, Feng Haitang's eyes widened in shock. "Senior apprentice brother." Hearing Feng Haitang's voice, the young man turned around and met her gaze. The young man had a rather outstanding appearance. Although not as handsome as Luo Nantian, he was dressed in white with a folding fan in his hand. His every movement had a carefree and unrestrained attitude. However, after seeing Feng Haitang, his pupils suddenly shrank, as if he saw something unbelievable. Then, the shock on his face suddenly turned into ecstasy. He rushed out like an arrow and hugged Feng Haitang. "Haitang, is it really you? Why are you here? Do you know how long I, uncle, auntie, and fellow apprentice brothers have been looking for you?" Feng Haitang wasn't used to having intimate physical contact with men other than Yan Haotian. Just as she was about to push him away, she heard the young man's words and became slightly dazed. "Father, mother, and master, how are they?" Feng Haitang's voice was slightly hoarse, full of guilt. When the Yan family declined, her parents broke off the engagement with Yan Haotian on her behalf. Although she was unwilling, she knew that her parents were afraid that she would suffer with Yan Haotian. She stayed true to her feelings, but failed her parents. Her parents only had her as their daughter. If they knew that she had secretly run away, they would probably be very sad and anxious, right? The young man let go of her and looked at her without blinking. After a while, he said, "Of course, uncle and auntie are very worried about you. For the past year, they have been looking for you everywhere. They are afraid that you will suffer. The last time I went to your house, they saw that auntie was sick." "What?" Feng Haitang's expression changed. "Mother is sick. How is her illness? Is it serious? Senior brother Feng, tell me quickly." However, the young man did not answer her. Instead, he turned around slightly and landed on her and Yan Haotian's intertwined hands. His eyes narrowed. "Haitang, who is this? Aren't you going to introduce him to me first?" Although Feng Haitang was burning with anxiety, she still blushed when she heard the young man's question. But when Yan Haotian was about to withdraw his hand, she forcefully held it. Brother Yan was originally a proud son of heaven. He had awe-inspiring talent, a huge family background, and a beautiful and outstanding fiancée like Haitang. It was really enviable. Who would have thought that he would actually fall to the point where he couldn't even speak? If I were Brother Yan, I definitely wouldn't be able to endure such a fall. I'd rather die than live an ignoble life and become someone else's plaything. Yan Haotian clenched his fists tightly by his side. After a long while, he picked up the pen and wrote a few words on the paper. "What are you trying to say?" Chapter 651. Haitang is the pearl of the Feng clan, our most cherished junior sister. Her future is destined to be a meteoric success that everyone envies. But what can you bring her? If she goes out with you, junior sister will only be laughed at by others, and uncle and aunt Feng will not be able to lift their heads. Moreover, Haitang has many talents, but what about you? You don't even know how to speak. When you marry her, how are you going to accompany her? Let's say something more unpleasant. Although you were not born with this disability, your body is still damaged. Can you guarantee that the children you give birth to in the future will not have the same disability as you? When that time comes, how sad and regretful will junior sister Haitang be? Yan Haotian only felt a roar in his head, and his face turned pale in an instant. Fong Yicheng, on the other hand, was very satisfied with the effect he had created. The expression in his eyes became more and more arrogant and determined. I know that junior sister must be dead set on you now. She is infatuated with you. Hai Tang, this silly girl, has always been like this. She is especially loyal to her friends. But you better not misunderstand. That does not mean that she really likes you. It is only because of the previous engagement and her sympathy for you that she feels sorry for you and is too embarrassed to let go of you. But sympathy and pity, there is no real relationship between the two of you. One day, it will be used up. When she finds out that she made the wrong choice, I'm afraid she will be in so much pain that she will wish she was dead. Can you bear to see Hai Tang become like that in the future? Fong Yicheng's last sentence was like a giant hammer that ruthlessly smashed into Yan Haotian's heart. Sympathy and pity. Yes, what he was most afraid of was that Hai Tang's stubbornness to be with him was not because she loved him, but because she pitied him. When one day, Hai Tang found out that she had made a mistake in her feelings and regretted it, what should he do? If there was such a future, he would rather not have a beginning and not have any hope. Because without hope, there would be no disappointment, and there would be no despair. And without him, Hai Tang would accept Fong Yicheng, Luo Nantian, and a man who was 110,000 times better than him. She would definitely be happier for the rest of her life than marrying a cripple like him. Yan Haotian slowly closed his eyes. He felt as if there was something hot and wet surging in his eyes. But when he touched the corners of his eyes, everything was so dry. Just like his dried up and withered life from then on. At this moment, Fong Yicheng knew that he had achieved his goal. He stood up with a smile and used the handle of his fan to gently knock on the table. He leisurely said, "Tomorrow, junior sister Hai Tang and I will be returning to the Fong clan. I hope you can make things clear with Hai Tang as soon as possible and make her give up. Of course, I don't think Brother Yen would be so thick-skinned as to follow us back to the Fong clan, right? After all, you know very well that Uncle and Aunt Fong will never welcome you." After that, Fong Yicheng left with a smile. Just like that, Yan Haotian sat in front of the candlelight in a deathly stillness, his entire body ice-cold, until dawn. Early the next morning, Fong Hai Tang packed her luggage and hurried to Yan Haotian's room. Seeing Yan Haotian sitting in front of the extinguished candle, Fong Hai Tang was stunned. "Haotian, why are you still sitting here? Have you packed up? We're about to set off for Tianfu City." Chapter 652. I want to tell father and mother about us first. Wait until the wedding date is set, then we'll inform Miss and let the entire Netherflame army come to attend our wedding. Fong Hai Tang is a girl after all. When it comes to the wedding, she inevitably reveals a shy and sweet expression. She packs up the few clothes that Yan Haotian has, then looks at him with a slightly blushing face. Unexpectedly, when she turns her head, she meets Yan Haotian's almost deathly still eyes. She stares blankly. "Haotian, what's wrong with you? Why do you look so bad?" Fong Hai Tang steps forward, wanting to touch Yan Haotian's face and check his pulse. However, before she can touch Yan Haotian, she is pushed away. There's no expression on Yan Haotian's face. He slowly reaches out and makes a few gestures. "You go back, I won't go back with you." Fong Hai Tang stares blankly. You won't go back with me. Why? Could it be that you still bear a grudge against my parents for breaking off our engagement? Haotian, believe me, this time, I will definitely convince father and mother. I will tell them that, in this life, except for you, I, Fong Hai Tang, won't marry anyone. Fong Hai Tang wants to pull Yan Haotian's hand, but Yan Haotian takes a step back. How many times do you want me to say it before you understand? Yan Haotian gestures with his pen, expressing his meaning. It's impossible for me to be with you again. I used to treat you as my fiancé, just because there was an engagement between us. Towards you, I never had any feelings between a man and a woman. Not in the past, not now, and not in the future. So, after I escaped from the ghost city and heard that the engagement between us had been broken off, you don't know how glad I was. In this way, I don't have to marry a woman that I don't love. Feng Haitang stares blankly at the meaning of his strokes. Her rosy and bashful face loses all color little by little. Her lips tremble slightly, opening and closing them several times, but she can only make a broken sound. Haotian, what are you saying? What do you mean by those gestures just now? Why can't I understand it? Yes, I must not understand it. I'm not good at sign language, so sometimes I can't understand the meaning you express. I will study hard in the future. Feng Haitang said in a panic, speaking faster and faster. When I learn sign language, I can listen to you properly and know what you really mean. This time, if you don't want to go back with me, then forget it. I'll talk to my parents myself. Haotian, you wait in Hellflame Valley, wait for me to come back, okay? Yan Haotian suddenly roared and grabbed Feng Haitang's hand. His lips opened and closed little by little, and his hands gestured little by little. Feng Haitang, don't deceive yourself anymore. You've already understood what I meant, haven't you? After you go back this time, don't come back again. Stay by your parents' side and find a good man to marry. At least that man wouldn't be ugly, and at least that man wouldn't make you learn sign language to communicate with him. Don't say any more. Feng Haitang finally broke down. Hot tears flowed down from her eyes. She glared at the heartless man in front of her and said word by word, Yan Haotian, are you really going to be so heartless to me? Chapter 653. He was almost defeated by Feng Haitang's tears once again. However, Feng Yicheng's voice once again rang in his mind. What can you give her? Being together with you, junior sister will only be laughed at by others when she goes out in the future. Your disability, although it is not innate, but your body is still damaged. Can you guarantee that the children you give birth to in the future will not have the same disability as you? Yan Haotian closed his eyes, slowly writing, Haitang, go back, there is no future between us. From now on, let's not see each other again. Feng Haitang tightly bit her lips, biting her lower lip until it bled, but she could not stop the tears from flowing down. Yan Haotian, I only ask you one thing, you really, never loved me. Yan Haotian clenched his teeth, resisting the urge to wipe away her tears and the blood on her lips, slowly opening his lips. With silent determination, he gave Feng Haitang a fatal blow. No. I did. Good. I understand. Feng Haitang laughed lowly, but that smile was so sad and bleak, like a cuckoo crying blood. It was I, Feng Haitang, who thought too much of myself. It was I, Feng Haitang, who was willing to be lowly, but, from now on, I will never do it again. Yan Haotian, you can rest assured, from now on, I will never bother you again, we will never meet again in this life. After saying that, she turned around and ran away. Wet tears were blown by the wind, falling on Yan Haotian's face, wetting the corner of his lips. Even if he did not have a tongue, he could still taste the bitterness and despair of these tears. Yan Haotian stood there blankly, his mind filled with Feng Haitang's heartbroken face. That kind of misery, that kind of despair, there was not a trace of light in her eyes, as if from now on, her life would no longer have any happiness or color. Was Haitang's feelings towards him really just sympathy and pity? His determination and cruelty, could it really bring happiness to Haitang? From now on, he would never see Haitang again. Thinking of the last possibility, Yan Haotian only felt his heart was tightly wrapped by thorns, so painful that he could not breathe, so painful that his whole body was convulsing. Ah! Ah! He could not bear it anymore. As if he was crazy, he rushed out, rushing towards Haitang's room. However, this place was already empty. Cold and lonely, just like his heart that had been torn apart piece by piece. Just now, Haitang and Fang Yicheng left together. Suddenly, Luo Nanshan's voice came from behind him. Yan Haotian slowly turned around and saw Luo Nanshan's murderous expression. I've never seen Haitang look so sad and desperate. Luo Nantian enunciated each word clearly. Just yesterday, she was still filled with hope. With a sweet expression, she asked little Yu to go back and tell his master that they would be returning to Hellflame Valley later. Yan Haotian's body trembled slightly, and his head buzzed as if it was about to explode. However, Luo Nanshan's words entered his ears. I do not know what happened between the two of you. However, I know that you are the only person in this world that can make Haitang feel so much pain, to the point of being heartbroken. I don't know what Haitang sees in you. A coward like you doesn't deserve Haitang at all. Yan Haotian slowly lowered his eyes as he revealed a bitter smile. He had always known that he was not worthy of Haitang. Chapter 654. You're wrong. Haitang doesn't care about these external things. Those who truly love you will only feel pity and heartache. I said you're not worthy of Haitang because you don't know what Haitang really wants. As a man, you don't dare face and bear your own feelings. You only know how to be overcautious, afraid of being laughed at by others. Could it be that in your heart, other people's opinions are more important than Haitang's happiness? Yan Haotian's whole body trembles. He raises his head and stares blankly at Luo Nantian. Luo Nantian has always had the most gentle personality. Today is the first time he's been so angry, saying such merciless words. Haitang's disheartened appearance before she left made him unable to hide the anger and unwillingness in his heart. I'm willing to withdraw because I know that Haitang truly likes you. She can only be happy if she's with you. But now I'm starting to wonder if my decision was wrong. You think you're doing it for Haitang's good, but have you ever thought that besides yourself, can you guarantee that other men will give her happiness? If I knew you'd let someone like Fang Yicheng take Haitang away, I would never have given up on making Haitang my princess. Yan Haotian's pupils slightly contract. He opens his mouth to speak, but he can only make a mess of syllables. Boss, you've really gone too far this time. How can you make Haitang Jijie so sad? Lu Beiyu runs up from behind, angrily shouting, I tried so hard to persuade my brother to withdraw, saying that Haitang Jijie belongs to you, but you actually gave Haitang Jijie to that bastard Fang Yicheng. I had the Tianji battalion investigate overnight. This Fang Yicheng is in our Qi Yan country. Although he's nominally father's subordinate, he's already colluded with Luo Qingfeng and done a lot of bad things. Moreover, are you blind? I can't tell that this man has bad intentions towards Haitang Jijie. If Haitang Jijie is really sad and this bastard takes advantage of her, then you'll regret it for the rest of your life. Yan Haotian's breathing suddenly becomes heavy. At this moment, he can no longer bear it. He turns around and runs towards the door. There's a Fergana horse at the door. Lu Beiyu yells from behind, Boss, you must get Haitang Jijie back. Otherwise, just wait for the Nether Flame Army and Master to make you suffer the consequences. Luo Nantian sighed softly and said softly, I hope that he will wake up soon and not make Haitang sad. In the Valley of the Wilderness, Fang Yicheng lit a bonfire and set up a tent. When the food was cooked, he turned to look at Feng Haitang, only to find that she was still sitting there blankly, like a beautiful puppet doll, without any signs of life. Fang Yicheng's eyes flashed and he turned to walk towards her. He gently placed a hand on her shoulder and hugged her. He said softly, All right, Haitang, don't be sad. That Yan Haotian doesn't want to be with you because he's blind. Don't worry, senior brother will always be with you and won't let you be sad again. I'm sure uncle and auntie will be very happy to see us going back together. As he spoke, Fang Yicheng's gaze lingered on Feng Haitang's beautiful face, his eyes flashing with desire and desire. Chapter 655. With that, he hugged Feng Haitang tighter and was about to kiss her. But just as his lips were about to touch Feng Haitang's face, he suddenly staggered from a heavy push. Feng Haitang suddenly stood up and looked down at him. Her eyes flashed with a fierce light. How do you know that I am sad because Haotian is not willing to be with me? Fang Yicheng was startled, a trace of panic flashed in his eyes. So it was you. Feng Haitang suddenly came to her senses. She gritted her teeth and said, You said something to him last night, right? Fang Yicheng laughed dryly, Junior sister, what are you talking about? Senior brother, I don't understand. I only saw that Yan Haotian did not go home with you. I guessed that he must have rejected you. That's why you are so sad. Senior brother, I am also concerned about you. Stop with your flowery words. Feng Haitang coldly said, Yan Haotian, that guy, is indeed a blockhead. His mind is always unable to think. Moreover, after the great change, he is especially self-abased. He always wraps himself up tightly, afraid that anyone can see through his heart. But, yesterday, his attitude had clearly loosened. After a night, he suddenly retreated and even said such heartless words. It was as if he was trying to think of a way to make me give up. I originally did not understand why he would be so cruel. But now I know, it was you. Last night, you must have said something to him. Fang Yicheng stood up from the ground, revealing a disdainful expression. At this moment, he no longer pretended, even if I said something to him, so what? Which one of my words was not the truth? He is just an ugly trash. He is not worthy of you in the first place. What's more, junior sister, do you really like such an ugly person? You are just pitying him, pitying him. He was once a slave. He does not even have dignity. How can he be worthy of you? But I am not the same. Fang Yicheng took a step forward. His eyes were burning and his breathing was heavy. Junior sister, I have liked you since young. I wanted to marry you. But you had an engagement in the past, so I had to suppress my feelings. But now, uncle and auntie have already broken off the engagement for you. The Yan family has been defeated, and Yan Haotian has been destroyed. He is no longer worthy of you, but you and I are a match made in heaven. As Fang Yicheng spoke, he seemed to be unable to hold it in any longer. He suddenly pounced over and hugged Feng Haitang, wanting to kiss her. Junior sister, the sun and moon can bear witness to my feelings for you. Just give in to me. Feng Haitang felt her stomach churn. She was so disgusted that she wanted to die. She tried to push him away, but Fang Yicheng's cultivation was on par with hers. As a man, his strength was far greater than a woman's. She actually couldn't push him away for a moment. Fang Yicheng's breath was already on her face, and his lips were about to kiss her neck. An ominous glint flashes in Feng Haitang's eyes. The weapon that Mayan gave her, flowing light damask, suddenly flies out and heavily lashes Fang Yicheng's face. Fang Yicheng let out a blood-curdling scream. He quickly retreated and covered his face. But the flowing light damask was poisonous. Although it was not fatal, it caused the wound on his face to rapidly fester. Fang Yicheng trembled as he touched his face. But all he felt was blood, and there were also sticky abscesses. He angrily attacked his heart. Haitang, you. I only like you, and you actually want to kill me. Chapter 656. After all, Fang Yicheng was her senior brother. They grew up together and he took good care of her when they were young. Feng Haitang and Fang Yicheng did not have romantic feelings, but they were siblings. This is the antidote. You'll be fine after taking it orally and applying it externally. Feng Haitang has a cold face, handing over the draft, but senior brother, those words, and those things, I hope you won't do them again in the future. I only have a sibling relationship with you. It's absolutely impossible for us to become husband and wife. Fang Yicheng lowered his eyelids, hiding the vicious glint in his eyes. However, his face revealed an ashamed expression as he murmured, I'm sorry, Haitang. I just liked you too much and couldn't help myself. Don't be angry, I won't do that again. We're still fellow apprentices, right? As he says that, he sprinkles the draft on the wound, but because of the pain, he can't sprinkle it accurately. Seeing that such a precious antidote is going to be wasted, Feng Haitang sighs and steps forward to take the draft and apply it on him. The wound quickly begins to heal under the effect of the draft, and the abscess also automatically falls off. Feng Haitang heaved a sigh of relief. Just as she was about to withdraw her hand, she suddenly felt a sharp pain in her neck. Her heart skipped a beat. She knew something was wrong. But in the end, it was too late. Her body instantly became incomparably sore, and her consciousness slowly drifted away. Her mind was completely blank. She slowly fell into Fang Yicheng's arms. Before she completely lost consciousness, she saw Fang Yicheng's sinister smile. Then, he fell into a deep slumber. Fang Yicheng looked at the beautiful woman in his arms, but he had already lost his desire. There wasn't the slightest bit of friendship in his eyes, only thick and twisted resentment and hatred. Ha! Feng Haitang, since you don't know what's good for you and pretend to be a chaste woman in front of me, don't blame me for being impolite. I'll send you to a place right now. I guarantee that even if you're a chaste woman, you'll immediately become a married woman. Ha ha ha. Just nice, that Lord promised me that as long as I send him an excellent cauldron, he'll guarantee that I'll advance to the innate realm. Feng Haitang, you brought all of this upon yourself. You didn't want to be Madame Fang, and you just had to like that trash, Yan Haotian. Don't blame me, your senior brother, for ending up like this. Ha ha ha. 15 minutes after Fang Yicheng left with Feng Haitang, Yan Haotian arrived at the valley on his Fergana horse. He saw the tent and firewood, but did not see Feng Haitang. Yan Haotian suppressed his anxiety and searched the ground. Finally, he found Feng Haitang's hairpin in the grass. There was still a familiar stench lingering in the air. He knew that this was the smell of the flowing light damask, weapon that the miss had left for Haitang. Yan Haotian's pupils suddenly contracted. Why would Haitang use the flowing light damask? His mind recalls Liu Beiyu's words, Fang Yicheng is not a good thing. Could it be that something really happened to Haitang? Yan Haotian's body trembled violently. The regret and anxiety in his heart almost drowned all his thoughts. When he thought of the danger that Haitang might have encountered, he felt his entire body convulse and suffocate, unable to move. Puchi! A knife stabbed into his thigh. The sharp pain made him calm down. Yan Haotian abruptly stood up and carefully observed the ground for a moment before he once again chased after them like a bolt of lightning. Haitang, wait for me. Wait for me. Chapter 657. A small town on the border of Qi Yan country and Jingqing country, Mu Yan rushes over, travel-worn. What she sees is Liu Beiyu, Guanhu, and the others anxiously running around in circles. What happened to Yan Haotian and Haitang? Speak clearly. The girl's cool and steady voice finally calms down Liu Beiyu and the others' emotions. Liu Beiyu gives a brief account of what happened in the past few days. We thought that boss would quickly get Haitang's sister back, but after waiting for a day and a night, there's still no news. Lu Beiyu says in annoyance, Master, it's all my fault, hit me. I only wanted boss to get Haitang's sister back as soon as possible, but I didn't think that they would be in danger. If I had known earlier, I wouldn't have let boss go after them by himself. I should have let the people from the Ink camp follow. It's my fault. Guanhu says in a hoarse voice, the people from the Tianji unit clearly gave me information, saying that Fong Yicheng, that gigolo, isn't a good thing, but I didn't stop Miss Fong, and even let her go with someone else. I'm really a pig. Saying that, he ruthlessly slaps his own face, his eyes filled with annoyance. When she hears the name Fong Yicheng, Mu Yan suddenly frowns. Fong Yicheng, she's not unfamiliar with this name. In her past life, after a few years, this person turned to Gong Qinchua and became her most loyal lackey. She didn't expect that Fong Yicheng used to be Fong Haitang's senior brother. Then, in the end, under Gong Qinchua's matchmaking, Fong Haitang married Xiao Tianxiang, and eventually suffered humiliation and died. Was Fong Yicheng pulling strings in between? Now that Haitang and Haotian are missing, is it because of him? Mu Yan has an intuition that Haitang's disappearance this time is definitely related to Xiao Tianxiang. Just as she's about to speak, she suddenly sees a white horse galloping over. The horse runs so fast that when it reaches Mu Yan and the others, there's no way for it to stop. Lu Beiyu is startled to see the person on the horse. Big brother, be careful. Guanhu's tiger eyes sink, his burly body soars into the air. He grabs Luo Nanshan's collar and pulls him down from the horse. At the same time, he grabbed the reins with his other hand. The horse let out a neigh, and its hooves rubbed against the ground violently before it slowly came to a stop. Luo Nantian was still in a state of shock, but he didn't have the time to wipe the sweat off his forehead. Panting for breath, he said, Jingqing country sent news that the Fong family married Fong Haitang off to Jingqing country's formidable great general's son, Xiao Tianxiang. What? How is this possible? Guanhu and Lu Beiyu simultaneously shouted, how could Sister Haitang marry someone else? Murderous intent suddenly overflows in Mayan's eyes. It really is Xiao Tianxiang. When is the wedding? Luo Nanshan's voice trembled with extreme worry and fear. No. There was no wedding. Haitang was sent directly to Xiao Tianxiang's residence. At the same time, Xiao Tianxiang sent the betrothal gifts to the Fong family. The head of the Fong clan, Haitang's grandfather, had directly announced that she had become the daughter-in-law of the Zhao clan. Haitang's parents didn't agree. I heard that they were beaten to the brink of death and imprisoned. As he says each word, Guanhu and Lu Beiyu widen their eyes in shock and anger. Master, what should we do? Mayan takes a deep breath, and coldly says, Guanhu, pass down the order, have the Nether Flame army assemble, the target, Jingqing country's Weiyuan general's mansion. Chapter 658. Guanhu and Lu Beiyu look at each other, their eyes lighting up a little. Understood. Yes, whoever dares to touch their Netherflame Valley's people, they will definitely make them pay 1,000 times over. When Haitang slowly wakes up, she only feels that her whole body is indescribably sore and powerless. Even her eyelids seem to be filled with lead, unable to open. Her mind is in chaos, and she vaguely remembers that before she fainted, she was applying medicine for her senior brother, Fong Yicheng. Then, she only feels a pain in her neck and loses consciousness. What's going on with her now? At this moment, a familiar voice enters her ear. Prince Zhao, this Fong Haitang is this subordinate's junior sister. Since childhood, her talent has been awe-inspiring, and her appearance is beautiful. I have admired little junior sister for a long time, but when I thought of your majesty, I felt that only a noble person like you is worthy of little junior sister, so I sent her over to you. This is Fang Yicheng's voice. As Haitang listens to the contents of his words, her heart burns with raging anger. Fang Yicheng, she treats him as an older brother, but she didn't expect that he would actually scheme against her like this. Ha ha ha. Fang Yicheng's good intentions, this prince will certainly remember in my heart. This prince is naturally very satisfied with Miss Feng, otherwise I wouldn't have given her the title of prince's wife. Ha 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 ha. It's a very greasy man's voice. Then, a cold and slippery hand caresses Haitang's face, making her feel nauseous, as if a reptile is wriggling on her face. Such a stunner, in bed, will certainly make this prince incomparably ecstatic. This isn't just making this prince a cultivation furnace to maintain eternal youth. Fang Yicheng, you've done very well, this prince will definitely not treat you unfairly. This bottle of pills is something that I obtained with great difficulty from my father. Take one every month, and after a year at most, you can prepare to break through to the pre-celestial realm. When this hand is about to reach into Feng Haitang's collar, Feng Haitang uses all the strength in her body to suddenly open her eyes and fiercely stare over. Meeting her fierce gaze, the man in front of her was not afraid at all. Instead, he let out an excited laugh. Little beauty, you're finally awake. This prince was worried that you were too obedient and not exciting enough. Feng Haitang took a deep breath. She wanted to roar loudly, but could only make a weak sound. You, who are you? What do you want to do to me? Ha ha ha, little beauty, could it be that you don't even recognize me, Xiao Tianxiang? I am the prince of Weiyuan General's mansion, and you are already the wife of the prince. What do you think I want to do to you? A wet and slippery hand touched her chin wretchedly, making Feng Haitang so disgusted that she wanted to vomit. However, she didn't have any strength left in her body. She couldn't move at all. She resisted the nausea and looked at Fang Yicheng. Why? Fang Yicheng. I treat you like a senior brother, like an elder brother. Why are you treating me like this? Fang Yicheng looked up and down at her beautiful face and curvaceous body. A trace of regret flashed in his eyes. Then he laughed softly and said, Little junior sister, how can you say that? Everything that senior brother did was for your own good. The home that senior brother found for you is much better than that crippled mute. Now that you're the prince's wife, shouldn't you be thanking your senior brother? Chapter 659. Fang Yicheng looked at Xiao Tianxiang, bowed to him and said meaningfully, Young Master Zhao, a moment of spring night is worth 1,000 gold. Then this little brother will take his leave first and won't delay your wedding night. His hand tightly grasped the pill that Xiao Tianxiang had just given him. Although he was a little reluctant to give his junior sister away, compared to his cultivation and future, it was all worth it. He, Feng Haitang, if you want to blame someone, you can only blame yourself for being blind and not knowing what's good for you. You'd rather have that trash Yan Haotian than accept me. Since that's the case, then you can sink in hell until you die. Fang Yicheng swaggered away and Zhao Tianxiang waved his hand to close the door. He immediately walked over to Haitang with a lewd smile. Feng Haitang gritted her teeth and said, If you dare to touch me, when I escape, I will definitely dismember your body into 10,000 pieces. Ga-ga-ga. Zhao Tianxiang let out a series of strange laughter. Little beauty is really spicy, but the more spicy, the more flavorful it is. This prince likes it. What should we play first? Saying that, his face suddenly revealed a sinister smile. He quickly walked to the wall and took a whip from it. The whip was covered with fine barbs and the original dark green whip body was already dyed red with blood. Zhao Tianxiang took the whip and swung it on the ground, then step by step, he walked towards Feng Haitang on the bed. Little beauty, this is your first time here, then let's have some fun first. Just as his voice fell, the whip in his hand suddenly rose up and heavily lashed Haitang's body. Feng Haitang was drugged and her whole body couldn't move, but the pain seemed to be magnified 10 times. The whip hit her body and instantly tore her clothes. Her skin felt a sharp burning pain, causing her to let out a muffled groan. Her muffled groan made Zhao Tianxiang incomparably excited. He laughed strangely and the whip in his hand lashed out even more forcefully. Every time he did so, a piece of Haitang's clothes would be torn off, leaving dark red marks on her smooth skin. Scream. Scream it out loud. Ha 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 ha. What I love the most is hearing your bitter tears begging for mercy. The more it's like this, the more excited I'll be when I play. When the barbed whip landed on his body, it brought him a pain worse than death. This whip was specially made. It would not leave bloody wounds on the body, but the pain would be amplified by the medicinal effect. However, Haitang clenched her teeth. Other than the first time she was caught off guard and let out a muffled groan, she clenched her teeth tightly. Even if the pain made her break out in a cold sweat, even if she bit her lips until they bled, she did not make a sound. Zhao Tianxiang gasped for breath as he stopped swinging his whip. His crimson eyes scanned Haitang's body. He seemed to be somewhat dissatisfied that Feng Haitang did not cry for mercy like other women. However, very quickly, he revealed an excited smile. Little beauty, it seems that this little bit of entertainment is not enough to satisfy you. You are truly worthy of being the woman this prince has taken a liking to. Just you wait, in a while, this prince will definitely satisfy you. Zhao Tianxiang turned around and took a red candle from the candlestick beside him. Because of his excitement, the hand that he used to hold the red candle was trembling. Seeing this grinning man walk closer, Haitang's heart was filled with endless panic. Chapter 660. What do you want to do? Zhao Tianxiang sees a flash of panic on her face, and he's indescribably excited. The hand holding the candle trembles. Then he laughs cruelly. What do I want to do? Of course I want to do something that would make you, little beauty, happy. Saying that, he suddenly tips the candle in his hand in Haitang's direction. The next moment, scalding candle oil drips down, flowing on the wound caused by the whip. Hiss. The burning pain makes Haitang suck in a breath of cold air, her whole body spasming. How delicate is the wound caused by the whip, how could it withstand the scalding candle oil? Zhao Tianxiang sees her reaction, and his laughter becomes more and more carefree. He reaches out to tear off her clothes, and at the same time, he burns the candle flame on Haitang's skin. Sizzle, that's the sound of the candle flame scorching flesh. Haitang couldn't bear it anymore, and she lets out a mournful scream. Zhao Tianxiang listens to her scream, and he really gets excited. He tears off his clothes, and pounces on her. Little beauty, scream, scream, the more you scream, the more excited this air is, the happier I am, ha ha ha. However, before Zhao Tianxiang can climb on top of Haitang, he suddenly feels a sharp pain in his waist, and then his whole body is thrown out like a sack. Who dares to break in, Help! Help! Without waiting for Zhao Tianxiang to ask any questions, a fierce storm of attacks has already fallen on his body. There's the sound of crack crack in his ears, that's the sound of the bones in his hands and feet being trampled and broken. Zhao Tianxiang's eyes turn white from the pain, and he finally can't bear it anymore, fainting. Yan Haotian's eyes are crimson, unwaveringly glaring at the unconscious person on the ground. There's a murderous intent like that of a wild beast in his eyes. However, before he could kill Zhao Tianxiang, there's the low sound of a woman sobbing coming from behind him. Yan Haotian's whole body stiffens, and he promptly turns and rushes back to the bedside, helping the disheveled Feng Haitang up. Looking at the scars all over Feng Haitang's pure white body, Yan Haotian almost can't breathe. He shakes his hand, and takes out the antidote draft that Mayan gave him, and lets Haitang take it. The medicine's effects quickly allowed Feng Haitang to regain her mobility. However, her body was ice cold. She curled up in Yan Haotian's arms, clutching his clothes tightly as her body trembled incessantly. Tears flowed out of her eyes uncontrollably. Just a moment ago, she really thought that she had fallen into hell and that there was no hope left in her life. At that moment, the despair and humiliation in her heart could not be described with words. She couldn't even bite her tongue to commit suicide. However, at that time, she didn't cry. Even though she was already in hell, without any hope, she still didn't shed a single tear. But now, she was in Yan Haotian's embrace, smelling the man's familiar scent. Haitang could no longer hold back her tears. Yan Haotian wanted to open his mouth to comfort the crying girl in his arms, but he couldn't make a sound. Looking at Feng Haitang's frightened, heartbroken, and battered appearance, Yi Zichen felt a chill run down his spine. He really wanted to stab himself to death. If he hadn't listened to Feng Yicheng, that despicable person, and broken off his relationship with Haitang, how could Haitang leave with a broken heart? How could she have experienced all these things? Clearly, he wanted Haitang to be happy, so he left her, but he did not expect that she would suffer such harm. Patter. Chapter 661. Feng Haitang stares blankly. She stops crying and looks up. But she sees the scene of a man silently crying. Yan Haotian's face is still expressionless, as if he's not aware that he's crying. But the way he's silently crying like this, makes people truly feel his remorse, pain, and sorrow. At this moment, Feng Haitang's heart is miraculously warmed. Even the pain in her body, as well as the nausea and fear from just a moment ago, are thrown little by little to the back of her mind. Her hand gently caresses Yan Haotian's scarred face, wiping away the tears on his face. She says softly, "Haotian, I've already been touched by that disgusting scum Zhao Tianxiang, and there are ugly scars left on my body. In the future, I will no longer be worthy of you. You were right to push me away before. Without me holding you back, as the commander of the Ink camp, and with the Mrs. Cultivation, you will definitely be able to find a better woman." Before he could finish his words, Yan Haotian has already covered his mouth. He lets out an angry roar, fiercely glaring at him. In those eyes, there's an eagerness to express his feelings and deep feelings. Feng Haitang's heart revolves 1,000 times. There's only one thought in her mind, "Yan Haotian, you still dare to say you don't love me. Now you should have a good taste of what it was like to be rejected." But on the surface, she shows a heartbroken expression, pulling Yan Haotian's hand down. She struggles to leave his embrace. "Yan Haotian, I don't need your sympathy. Didn't you say that you've never liked me? Now that I'm willing to take the initiative to leave you, isn't that just perfect for you?" Yan Haotian is not good with words, not to mention that he can't speak at all right now. At this moment, seeing Haitang covered in cuts and bruises, yet heartbroken and determined to break free from his embrace, he only feels his heart burning with impatience. The next moment, his body seems to separate from his brain, having its own consciousness. Just as Haitang is about to break free from his embrace, he suddenly pulls her back into his embrace, and fiercely kisses her. Feng Haitang only gently struggles for a moment, then she's completely immersed in the man's hot kiss. The two of them don't notice that Zhao Tianxiang, who is on the verge of death on the ground, has opened his eyes, giving them a venomous look. Then, he used his only intact hand to crush a black pill. A faintly discernible and unique aura filled the room. Yan Haotian and Feng Haitang suddenly woke up and stood up from the bed. Seeing that Zhao Tianxiang had woken up and the thing he had just crushed in his hand, the two of them immediately swallowed a pill each. Seeing their actions, Zhao Tianxiang could not help but burst into laughter. You think what I just crushed was poison? Poison. Ha. 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 You're wrong, that is much scarier than poison. You're dead. All of you. Dead. Yan Haotian and Feng Haitang both had a bad premonition. It was as if some extreme danger was slowly approaching them. Yan Haotian quickly stepped forward and unsheathed the long sword in his hand, slashing at Zhao Tianxiang's neck. No matter what kind of danger was about to descend, this scum who tried to humiliate Haitang must die. However, just as Yan Haotian's sword landed heavily on Zhao Tianxiang's skin, Zhao Tianxiang watched in horror. Chapter 662. Immediately after, Yan Haotian feels a powerful force hitting him. Severe pain erupts from his body and internal organs. His whole body flies out, heavily hitting the wall, and he suddenly spits out a mouthful of blood. Haotian. Feng Haitang cries out, rushing out to support him. How are you? Yan Haotian doesn't answer him, but looks at Zhao Tianxiang's position. In the blink of an eye, a middle-aged man had appeared. The middle-aged man's appearance is very ordinary, not even as outstanding as Zhao Tianxiang. But the terrifying pressure emanating from his body makes Yan Haotian and Feng Haitang tremble uncontrollably. Father, Darren father, save me, these thieves want to kill me. Zhao Tianxiang crawls to the middle-aged man's side, prostrating at his feet, snot and tears overflowing as he complains. Hearing Zhao Tianxiang's name for the middle-aged man, Yan Haotian and Feng Haitang immediately react to who this person is. Jingqing country's formidable great general Zhao Hai. This is a very mysterious person. Very few people know when he became Jingqing country's great general, and what kind of military service he achieved to become a great general. Even in the Yanwu continent, there are very, very few people who have seen Zhao Hai's true face. He is conferred the title of formidable general, but the troops and horses under his command are no more than 10,000. It's just like a false general with an empty title and authority. But strangely, the entire Jingqing country's royal family and the Gong family are in awe of Zhao Hai. No matter what Zhao Hai requests, no matter how Zhao Tianxiang runs amok in Jingqing country, the Gong family never interferes or condemns him. The most unimaginable thing is that the Gong family treats Zhao Hai with such courtesy. However, when the Gong family was destroyed by Mayan and the others, and the entire Jingqing country changed hands, Zhao Hai, the formidable general, doesn't have the slightest reaction. It seems that the life and death of the Gong family, and even the entire Yanwu continent, has nothing to do with him. Hearing Zhao Tianxiang's cries of accusation, Zhao Hai just lowers his head and gives him a cold look, his eyes filled with contempt. Shut up. Zhao Tianxiang's cries abruptly stop, his eyes full of fear as he looks at Zhao Hai. Seeing his cowardly appearance, Zhao Hai was even more disgusted. If you weren't my son, would have torn you into pieces and fed you to the dogs. I really didn't expect that I, Zhao Hai, a heaven-warping genius, would have a useless son like you. Zhao Tianxiang shivered, not daring to say a word. Zhao's line of sight fell on Yan Haotian and Feng Haitang. He coldly snorted, with a high and mighty deterrence, even if Zhao Tianxiang is a waste, he is still my son. You actually dared to hurt my son, are you ready to bear the consequences? This man's pressure was so terrifying that it was suffocating. Chapter 663. However, when Feng Haitang's profound chi surged, Zhao Hai let out a cry of surprise, and revealed a surprised expression, your profound chi and root bone. Before he could finish speaking, Zhao Hai's figure flashes, and he suddenly disappears. The next moment, he's already in front of Haitang. Yan Haotian's reaction is also surprisingly fast. Almost immediately, he rushes in front of Haitang, wanting to block Xiao Hai's movements. However, Xiao Hai's cultivation is really too far apart from his. Yan Haotian's movements are like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. Xiao Hai doesn't even move, directly grabbing Yan Haotian's neck. Blood overflows from Yan Haotian's throat. Haotian. Haitang recklessly rushes over. Xiao Hai sneered as he took out a rope-like thing and threw it. That rope seems to have a life of its own, directly wrapping around Haitang's body, making her unable to move. The rope suddenly tightens, and Feng Haitang only feels a suffocating pain. Soon after, she can't hold on any longer, and faints. Xiao Hai casually tosses the dying Yan Haotian to the side, condescendingly looking down at them. His eyes narrow, revealing a thoughtful light, obviously just a mortal of the Yinwu continent, but there's actually a little spiritual power left in their bodies. Really interesting. He crouches down, grabbing Haitang's face and looking at it. The smile on his face becomes more and more sinister. It's actually a furnace with a good physique. Very good, very good. I was just worrying about how to cultivate in this Yinwu continent. Xiao Hai raises his hand, and the rope immediately extends, binding Yan Haotian as well. The end of the rope flies directly into Xiao Hai's hand. Seeing that Xiao Hai is about to leave, Xiao Tianxiang is anxious. Father, that Feng Haitang is this child's chosen wife. Xiao Hai's footsteps stop, and he walks towards him step by step. You want to fight with me over something? Xiao Tianxiang trembles with fear, almost crying. No, no, father, this child doesn't dare. This woman is yours, yours. Humph, who do you think you are? Without me, you don't even have the qualifications to be a human. Xiao Hai condescendingly looks at him, his eyes full of contempt. You'd better recognize that, let alone a woman, even your life is in my hands. Xiao Tianxiang's face is full of snot and tears, constantly crying and begging for mercy. Xiao Hai coldly snorted and threw a bottle of pills at him. You should be glad that you're my son. Otherwise, a waste like you wouldn't be qualified to live in this world. The porcelain bottle that was thrown directly smashed into Xiao Tianxiang's forehead, causing a bump to appear. However, he did not complain at all. Instead, he happily accepted the pill and said fawningly, Lord Father, you really are the most powerful person in this world. The elixirs that you've taken out are 100 times more precious than those of that Heavenly Road sect or Ghost City. According to my son, the one who should really unify the Yinwu continent should be you. Xiao Tianxiang's flattery will make. Xiao Hai Tianxiang is Xiang. Xiao's flat flattery. Xiao Tianxiang is. Xiao Tianxiang sensed that something was wrong. When he wanted to correct himself, Xiao Hai lifted his foot and kicked him in the chest. He sneered and said, whether I'm fierce or not, it's not for you to say. Yen and Feng. Hi. Yen, and. Chapter 664. After a long time, he stood up in a sorry state. With trembling hands, he poured out the pills from the bottle and stuffed them into his mouth. Once the pill entered his stomach, his internal injuries healed rapidly. However, the fractures on his hands and legs would not heal in a short period of time. Prince. Are you all right? The guards outside rushed in and were shocked to see Xiao Tianxiang's pale face and limp limbs. Xiao Tianxiang raised his hand and slapped him hard on the face. Trash. Someone actually managed to sneak in just like that. What's the point of keeping you here? Hurry up and bring the doctor over. Yes. This subordinate will go find a doctor. The guard was beaten, but he didn't dare to act rashly and quickly left. Unexpectedly, Xiao Tianxiang called out to him again. His blood-stained face revealed a cruel and vicious expression. "Wait a minute. Bring those female martial artists over." When the guard heard his words, he shivered. His eyes were filled with reluctance and fear. But in the end, he didn't dare to say anything more. He bowed and answered, "Yes." Zhao Tianxiang held his hand that was still fractured. Remembering how Feng Haitang and Yan Haotian had beaten him, and how Zhao had looked at him like a dog, his face twisted. However, he didn't dare to resist Zhao, and he didn't dare to fight with him over a woman. Therefore, he could only vent his anger on those women. Seeing those women being tortured by him until they were covered with cuts and bruises, living a life worse than death, his perverted heart was satisfied. "Miss, this is General Wei Yuan's mansion." Ru Yan bowed and said, "This subordinate will first have the Tianji battalion's people go in and scout the situation. There's no need." Mu Yan faintly interrupts her. "Her order is concise and clear, directly charge in." Ru Yan was startled and did not respond. The people of the Ying camp have already let out a howl like a wolf, letting out a strange cry as they rush into the Zhao family's mansion. The people of the Ying camp have all rolled over a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. What they're most impatient with is beating around the bush. What's more, their boss and sister-in-law had been captured. They'd been suppressing a belly full of anger for a long time and wished for nothing more than to chop those dregs into pieces. Now, Mu Yan's order was exactly what they wanted. In a short quarter of an hour, the guards of General Wei Yuan's mansion have already been completely slaughtered by the seething anger of the Ying camp. The clamor of slaughter outside did not affect the singing and dancing in the main hall at all. From time to time, beautiful music and the man's carefree laughter could be heard. Every now and then, there would be the sound of a woman moaning and making people blush. Guan Hu sneered, "You're still having fun even when you're about to die." He waves his hand, and the people of the Ink camp immediately move in unison and rush towards the main hall. However, when the people of the Ink camp see this scene in the main hall, they are also stunned. From the outside, one would think that the hall was filled with the sounds of birds chirping and swallows, men and women making love. It was like heaven. However, when he saw the sight before him, he realized that this wasn't heaven at all. It was hell. The hall was filled with women who were being abused. Some of them had their limbs chopped off, while others had parts of their skin peeled off, revealing their tender flesh dripping with blood. There were also some who were wantonly played with by 4 to 5 men. Some even had their glasses dug out and their tongues cut out. However, this wasn't the most frightening thing. Rather, it was that they were trapped in this kind of purgatory. Their eyes were dug out, their limbs were chopped off, and their blood was flowing all over the ground. Chapter 665. Surrounded by these women, Zhao Tianxiang is holding a torture device, abusing these people while letting out a sharp and wanton laughter. Many of the people in the Ying camp came from the ghost cities Wanrenku. They've also seen the misery of the people who have been swallowed and controlled by the soul-devouring insect. But there's never been a scene that could make them more shocked and angry than the one before their eyes. This is no longer the ugliness of human nature, but, Zhao Tianxiang, that scum, beast. He deserves to die. Someone couldn't help but let out a trembling roar. This roar startled Zhao Tianxiang to his senses. He looks over with a pair of misty red eyes, shouting incoherently, "Who are you people, who let you in?" Suddenly, his voice pauses. A pair of half-squinted eyes suddenly widen, staring in the direction of the door like an idiot. With a slurping sound, his saliva flows down. He even ignores the pain in his leg that had just been broken, and dazedly walks towards the door. Beautiful, too beautiful. This Shitzi has had so many women, but I've never seen such a stunner. Little beauty, have you come to throw yourself into this Shitzi's arms? At the entrance of the great hall, a young girl dressed in black leisurely walks in, holding a zither in her hands. The night wind blows her skirt and long hair, and the candlelight in the great hall shines on her snow-like skin. A devastatingly beautiful face is revealed before Zhao Tianxiang's eyes just like that. Throughout his life, Zhao Tianxiang has abused and defiled countless beautiful women, but there's never been a woman that could make his heart palpitate like this young girl before him, as if the blood in his whole body is boiling. Could it be that heaven treats him too well? Seeing that his father had snatched away Feng Haitang, he actually sent him one that's 100 times better than Feng Haitang. Little beauty, what's your name? Follow this Shitzi, and this Shitzi will guarantee that you'll eat and drink well in the future. Before he could finish his words, he suddenly hears the sweet sound of a zither. The young girl's slender hands pluck the strings of the zither before him. Her snow-white and translucent fingertips set off the black sound of the zither, appearing particularly breathtaking. Thinking of having such a pair of hands serve him, Zhao Tianxiang is indescribably excited. His hand moves towards Mayan's face, but suddenly, he finds that his hand can't reach the girl's face. His body seems to have become shorter in a split second. Zhao Tianxiang doesn't seem to react. After a while, he lowers his head and looks down. Then, he sees a scene that makes his soul scatter. Ah, 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 ah. My legs, where are my legs? It wasn't that his body had become shorter, but his legs. His legs had disappeared. The ground was splattered with dripping blood and a few pieces of broken bones. Zhao Tianxiang finally feels the pain at Zhao, and lies. Zhao Tianxiang screams. Ru Yan sneered and stepped forward to step on Zhao Tianxiang's lower body. With a cracking sound, Zhao Tianxiang's lower body was badly mutilated. He finally couldn't hold on any longer and fainted. Zhao Tianxiang, Chen, sound, su, yu. The hall was filled with ghostly wails and wolf howls. Very soon, Zhao Tianxiang's subordinates were completely wiped out. Guan Hu hurriedly rushed over to report, "Miss, I can't find boss Miss Feng anywhere in this house." Yan's brows. Mayan looks. Is there really such a sinister cultivation method in this world? In the Yanwu continent, although there is also the concept of a human furnace, in reality, there are very few people who can advance through this insidious method. However, there were records of this in the ancient books passed down from ancient times. Some evil cultivators use this as an excuse to vent their bestial desires and wantonly violate women. Chapter 667. At least in Mayan's memory, no one has ever achieved a breakthrough in their cultivation through the method of gathering yin to nourish yang. But listening to the woman's words, Zhao Hai really used this cruel and evil secret method to enhance his cultivation. The woman slowly pulls up the corner of her mouth, revealing a bitter smile. The cultivation furnace method is extremely vicious, but of course it's effective. It's just that the people of the Yanwu continent don't know about it. Because the people of the Yanwu continent haven't molded their spiritual roots, so they can't use spiritual power. Naturally, they can't use this cultivation furnace method of gathering yin to nourish yang. Mayan looked startled, slightly narrowing her eyes. "You mean, you and Zhao Hai aren't people of the Yanwu continent? Who are you?" Hearing Mayan's question, the woman stares blankly ahead, as if she's stupid. Her remaining eye has no focus, and her face is filled with despair, but tears roll down from the corners of her eyes. "I am, who? I've almost forgotten who I am. My name is Li Xinru, an outer disciple of a small sect in the Shuzhen continent." Listening to Li Xinru's brief account, Mayan, including the Nether Flame Army, shows a shocked expression. It turns out that this Li Xinru wasn't born in the Yanwu continent, but in a higher plane than the Yanwu continent, the Shuzhen continent. People of the Shuzhen continent are born with spiritual roots, but there are also good and bad spiritual roots. The best single heavenly spiritual root is a rare peerless genius in the Shuzhen continent. As for the weakest of the 5 spiritual roots, it was almost impossible for them to cultivate, and they were no different from mortals. Although Li Xinru isn't completely unable to cultivate with mixed 5 spiritual roots, it's still a very poor quality for spiritual roots. So, she can only be an outer disciple of a small sect with no future. Unfortunately, she's beautiful and has no power to resist. She's often harassed and violated by the sect's stewards. When she was most helpless, she met Zhao Hai. Zhao Hai isn't a native of the Shuzhen continent, but a genius who broke through the peak of the pre-celestial stage in the Yanwu continent, went through the thunder tribulation, and finally molded his spiritual root to ascend to the Shuzhen continent. However, such a genius, when he came to the Shuzhen continent, became a waste not much different from Li Xinru. This was because Zhao Hai only had 4 spiritual roots. At best, his spiritual roots were slightly better than Li Xinru's. Li Xinru showed a sad smile. At that time, Zhao Hai often comforted me and helped me avoid the harassment of the steward. Slowly, I fell in love with him. One day, he was bullied by an inner court disciple and was humiliated by being pressed into a cesspool. He finally couldn't take it anymore and said that he wanted to take me to a place that was as beautiful as a paradise. He said that we don't have to worry about anyone bullying us there. We can proclaim ourselves as kings and do whatever we want. Mu Yan sneers, he's talking about the Yanwu continent. He couldn't survive in the cultivation continent anymore, so he had no choice but to escape back here to act like a tyrant. Hee, what a great talent, what a great ambition. Li Xinru continues with a hoarse voice, when I first returned to Yanwu continent, I really felt like I was in heaven. Chapter 668. At this point, Li Xinru's face began to distort. His hoarse voice became sharp, as if it contained endless remorse and anger. Zhao Hai, that scum, I didn't think that, in order to maintain his youth, he would actually use that evil cultivation method, use me as a cultivation furnace, absorb all the spirit roots in my body, and then throw me to that animal Zhao Tianxiang. From a high and mighty cultivator, I became a plaything inferior to even mortals, a cripple. Zhao Hai. Zhao Hai. Why did you do that to me? I can't wait to drink his blood, eat his flesh, I can't wait to tear him to pieces. Mu Yan sneered, I'm not interested in listening to your hatred. I just want to know where Zhao Hai is. Where are my companions that he captured? Li Xinru raised her eyes and looked at Mu Yan's young and delicate face. Her remaining eye revealed a look of jealousy and longing. She swallowed her saliva and said, I once put a kind of spirit fragrance on Zhao Hai's body. This fragrance can last for decades on his body. As long as I use the soul-chasing insect on me, I can find his position. As she spoke, she frowned and actually dug out a piece of flesh from her thigh. She took out a dark yellow little bug from within. You just need to feed this soul-chasing insect a little bit of your blood, and then let this insect rest on your palm. It will point you in Zhao Hai's direction. Mu Yan looked at the insect with a blank expression and reached out to take it. On the side, Ru Yan quickly said, Miss, let this subordinate do it. Hearing this, Li Xinru's eyelids twitched, but she didn't show any abnormality. Instead, she said, You'd better hurry. After that old thief Zhao Hai catches a woman, he will use medicine to warm her for an hour at most, and then he will start to take the yin to replenish the yang. If you're late, even if you can rescue her alive, the woman's innocence will be ruined. Ru Yan became more anxious when she heard this. She immediately wanted to catch the soul-chasing insect. However, before she could move, Mu Yan had already reached out and grabbed the soul-chasing insect, pinching it between her fingers. Li Xinru's forehead was covered with fine beads of sweat. She urged, Hurry up. Why don't you drop your blood on the soul-chasing insect? Time waits for no man. Mayan chuckles, lowering her head to look coldly at the already haggard woman. Do you really think I'm a fool? You can't even recognize the soul transfer goo. Li Shinru's only eyes suddenly widened. How do you know it's teleportation? She abruptly covers her mouth with her remaining hand, her eyes filled with shock as she looks at Mayan. Mu Yan's eyes were full of deep disgust. You said that Zhao Hai is a scum, but what good thing are you? You want to use the soul transfer goo to take over someone else's body and get rid of your current situation. Chapter 669. Hearing Mayan reveal her purpose, Li Shinru knows that she has no more hope, and her face distorts in a split second. She lets out a mournful scream. I'm a high and mighty cultivator. What's wrong with wanting a new life? That scum Zhao Hai, if it weren't for him, how could I end up like this? Your body is so perfect. If you molded a spiritual root, it would definitely be at least 3. Give it to me, give it to me. This way, I can return to the Shuzhen continent. Give your body to me. Amidst the scream, Li Shinru's body suddenly softens and falls to the ground. A streak of white light suddenly rushed out of her broken body and rushed straight towards Mu Yan. The Nether Flame Army has never seen such a bizarre and chaotic scene. Each and every one of them is so shocked that their complexions greatly change. Ru Yan and Guan Hu roar, "Miss, be careful," as they ruthlessly strike Li Shinru's soul. However, that fist, which contains powerful internal force, directly passes through Li Shinru's body, not causing her the slightest bit of harm. Li Shinru is almost completely insane at this time, desperately bumping into Mayan. It seems like she wants to knock out her soul and replace it herself. Mayan's expression doesn't change in the slightest, but the corners of her mouth hook up in a mocking arc. The next moment, the sound of a zither resounds. 7 swords of different colors revolved around her, forming a colorful sword array. When Li Shinru's soul hits the sword array, it immediately lets out a mournful howl, and it actually starts to burn. Aw, aw, aw. It hurts. It hurts. Impossible. How can you use spiritual power to burn my soul? This is the Yenwu continent. It's impossible for spiritual power to exist. Who the hell are you? Ah. I don't want to die. I don't want to die. Zhao Hai, even if I become a ghost, I won't let you off. The white ball of light is thoroughly burned, and Li Shinru's voice also dissipates into the air. The Nether Flame Army looks at Li Shinru's corpse on the ground, each and every one of them with lingering fear. A thought emerges in everyone's mind. The Shuzhen continent, what kind of powerful and frightening place is that? It's just that the most useless cultivator in the continent can actually abuse his power in the Yenwu continent, acting recklessly and unscrupulously. What about the other people on the Shuzhen continent? Miss, what should we do now? Ru Yan anxiously said, no one knows where Zhao Hai is. If we can't find him, then Hai Tang and Yan Haotian. Ru Yan took back the Qijue's sword spirit, looked at the soul transfer insect in her hand, and said in a deep voice, don't worry, I have a way to find Zhao Hai and Hai Tang. The soul transfer insect doesn't exist in the Yenwu continent, so it must have been brought down from the Shuzhen continent. Then Zhao Hai must have come into contact with it. Hearing what Mu Yan said, Ru Yan, Guan Hu, and the others were dumbfounded. Let the soul transfer insect lead the way. How is that possible? How could a goo worm lead the way? It was not a human or a spirit pet. Could it be that Miss had become stupid from worrying about Hai Tang and the others? Mayan takes out the Tian Mo Chin and sits cross-legged on the ground. She gently plucks the strings with her fingertips. In a quarter of an hour, clean up all the dregs in this room. The people of the everlasting camp will deal with the wounds of these innocent women and settle them down. We'll set off to save Hai Tang and Haotian in 15 minutes. With that, he began to play the piece of music, ignoring everyone's dumbfounded reaction. Chapter 670. Everyone in the Netherflame army stares blankly for a second, and immediately begins to move. Although they don't understand how the Miss is going to use the soul transfer insect to lead the way, in their hearts, the Miss is omnipotent. Everyone's speed is extremely fast. In the entire Wei Yuan General's mansion, all the beasts who humiliate women are sentenced to capital punishment. As for the other guards, their cultivations were all crippled. As for the main culprit, Zhao Tianxiang, the people of the Netherflame army don't even make a move, because the women who have woken up all hate him. In the end, the flesh on Zhao Tianxiang's body is bitten off by these women. In hellish pain and fear, he walks towards the end of his life. Ru Yan originally wanted to give these innocent women some drafts and let them leave safely. But these women have long lost hope for humanity and survival. Because they know that they have lost their innocence and become neither human nor ghost. Even if they return to the place where they used to live, they will not be accepted by their relatives and friends. They kneel on the ground, begging the Netherflame army to take them in. In the end, the Longevity Camp and the Tianji unit respectively incorporate some of these pitiful women. When the affairs of the mansion have just been dealt with, Mayan's zither also comes to an end. This time, she launches the fourth skill that she has just learned after advancing to the third level of Shin Musician, Summerbug's Language of Ice. If thriving is a skill that works on plants, then Summerbug's Language of Ice is a skill that works on all insects. It's just that Mayan has just obtained this skill, and it takes at least a quarter of an hour to activate it. Moreover, this quarter of an hour of playing can only barely control a very low-level insect. But for now, this is enough. The soul transfer insect on the Tian Imo Chin quickly scurries away from the sound of the zither and crawls in one direction. Mayan puts away the Tian Imo Chin and leaps to catch up. Keep up, I already know where it is. No way. Guan Hu murmurs, an insect can really lead the way. Ru Yan shakes her head with a bewildered look. Now I really believe that the Miss is omnipotent. With a splash, a basin of cold water is poured on Yan Haoyan's body, making him sober. A bone-chilling chill seeps into every inch of his meridians from the wounds on his body, making him tremble uncontrollably. Even though Yan Haoyan's endurance was top-notch, he still let out a low, muffled groan under such cold pain. I don't like to force women, but you only have two choices right now. Zhao said condescendingly, with contempt and indifference, I don't like to force women, but you only have two choices. First, become my cauldron. Although your talent will disappear completely, it will at least allow you and your lover to struggle at death's door. Second, you can resist to the death. Although I don't like to force a woman, I'm currently lacking a furnace. In the end, you will still obediently lie under me. As for your lover, I guarantee that he will suffer 100 times more than death. Yan Haoyan struggled to open his eyes. What he saw was Zhao's cruel smile and Feng Haitang's fearful but stubborn tearful eyes. You are called Feng Haitang, right? Now, make your choice. Do you want your lover to live or die? Feng Haitang glared at him fiercely. Why don't you kill us both? I'd rather die than be tainted by a beast like you. Chapter 671. Feng Haitang's body was still tied with a strange rope, but Zhao Hai didn't know what it was. After being tied up, her whole body was powerless, completely unable to resist. Zhao Hai slowly walked over to Yan Haoyan's side, looking down at Yan Haoyan's man-eating eyes, and laughed lowly. So, you're already awake. Haoyan. Feng Haitang cried out, wanting to rush over, but because her legs were weak, she fell to the ground. Haoyan, how are you? Yan Haotian opened his mouth to speak, but he couldn't speak, only making meaningless syllables. Zhao Hai sneered. So you're a mute without a tongue. I don't know why you would like this kind of cripple. It would be better to follow me, even without your cultivation, it's still better than following this waste. You shut up. Feng Haitang roared, you scum, what qualifications do you have to compare with him? In my eyes, you're not even as good as an animal. Before Feng Haitang could finish speaking, Zhao Hai lifted his foot and ruthlessly stepped on Yan Haotian's face. Yan Haotian's head hit the ground hard, blood flowing. Even the corner of his mouth overflowed with blood. However, under such pain, he unexpectedly didn't make a sound. Feng Haitang's face was deathly pale, her whole body trembling. Zhao Hai smiled sinisterly. Smelly whore, who do you think you are? You dare talk to me like that? Looking at your body, I'll enjoy it later, so I won't touch you. But your lover won't be so lucky. You tell me, should I peel off his skin, or break his bones inch by inch? Zhao Hai lowered his head to meet Yan Haotian's devouring eyes, and laughed lowly. I know, let's start with these eyes. Without a tongue, and then blind, and then unable to hear. You tell me, this kind of waste, what else can he do? Saying that, he squatted down and grabbed Yan Haotian's hair. Don't dash. Feng Haitang let out a heart-wrenching scream, trying to crawl over from the opposite side, but could only crawl on the ground, unable to move. I beg you, don't hurt him. As long as you let him go, I'll do anything you want. A low cry of despair came from her mouth. Tears rolled down her cheeks, bringing with them a desperate sadness. The moment she saw Yan Haotian's suffering, dignity, courage, and chastity were all thrown to the back of her mind. She just wanted the man she loved, the man who had suffered countless injuries, to live well. Zhao retracted his hand and looked at her, revealing a satisfied smile. Why didn't you listen to me earlier? I have always been very protective of the fairer sex. He raised his hand, and the rope on Feng Haitang's body seemed to have a life of its own as it quickly and automatically untied itself. Only one ring was left, tied around her waist and abdomen. Feng Haitang instantly felt that her strength had returned. She could move her hands and feet, but the profound qi in her body could not be used at all. As soon as she regained her freedom, she immediately wanted to rush towards Yan Haotian to check on his injuries. However, she soon heard Zhao Hai's voice, which seemed to come from hell, take off your clothes. Feng Haitang suddenly froze, looking at Zhao Hai in amazement. Chapter 672. Yan Haotian struggled under his feet, making noises like that of a trapped beast. Zhao Hai was careless for a moment, and he staggered. His eyes turned cold, and he suddenly flashed to Yan Haotian's side, heavily stomping down. Puff! Yan Haotian spat out a mouthful of blood, accompanied by the sound of broken ribs. Zhao Hai's eyes were fierce, and he continued to exert force. A waste actually wants to resist me. As long as he exerted more force, Yan Haotian's ribs would be completely broken, directly piercing his lungs. At that time, only death awaited him. Don't hurt him. Feng Haitang screamed, I'll take it off. She bit her lips hard and pressed her hands under her clothes, but she was trembling and unable to move. The shame and despair in her heart made her want to die immediately. But she couldn't. She couldn't just watch Hao Tian die. Even if she had no hope of survival, she had to let Haotian live until the mist came to save him. Yes, Feng Haitang firmly believed that the mist would come to save them. However, even if she couldn't wait, Yan Haotian would definitely be able to. Tears flowed down her cheeks, dripping to the ground, turning cold. Feng Haitang untied her belt and slowly took off her coat. The close-fitting underwear revealed the woman's graceful figure. Zhao's breathing quickened as he whispered, "Whore, she's really a stunner. Quick. Continue to take it off." Feng Haitang closed her eyes, her face pale as death, and slowly reached for the buttons of her underwear. Just then, a sudden bang came from under Zhao Hai's feet. Feng Haitang suddenly opened her eyes, and covered her mouth in shock, almost unable to breathe. Zhao staggered back a few steps until he hit the wall. Only then did he stabilize his body. Not far from him, Yan Haotian slowly stood up. His complexion was abnormally dark, but his broken ribs and the injuries on his body seemed to have miraculously healed. "This is impossible." Zhao Hai showed a shocked expression for the first time. "How can you stand up after being poisoned by me?" Feng Haitang suddenly covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. "Haotian. Haotian." Yan Haotian walked towards Zhao Hai, step by step. The profound qi around him was like a blazing fire, bursting out. "Ha! So you've overdrawn your life force to fight me to the death." Zhao couldn't help but sneer. "I don't know what method you have to break free from the shackles of my medicine. In a short period of time, at the cost of your life, you can burst out with all your strength. However, in my opinion, an ant will always be an ant. Even if you unleash all of your battle power, in my eyes, you're just a mantis trying to stop a chariot." Yan Haotian didn't seem to hear him at all. He clenched his fist and punched out fiercely. With a loud bang, the beam collapsed with the force of 1,000 caddies, but Zhao Hai easily dodged it. Then, his figure leaped around Yan Haotian like a ghost. Puff puff puff. Blood splattered everywhere. In just a few breaths of time, Yan Haotian's body was covered with countless wounds. The dark red liquid slowly gathered around Yan Haotian's body, stinging Feng Haitang's eyes. "Yan Haotian, you fool! Idiot!" Feng Haitang whispered softly, tears falling like rain. Chapter 673. However, she knows why Yan Haotian did that. Because Yan Haotian also thought that Mayan and the Nether Flame Army would soon come to save them. He wanted to leave the chance to live to her. "Idiot, like this, you still dare to say that you don't love me? Idiot, do you think that if you die, I can still live?" An earth-shattering noise comes. The whole house shakes violently, and more than half of it collapses. Smoke and dust fill the air, and Yan Haotian's blood-covered body flies out, heavily hitting a stone pillar, and he can no longer get up. Zhao Hai's face is gloomy, and he slowly wipes away the wound on his face. "You waste, you actually hurt me. Good, very good. Now, I have no interest in torturing you anymore. Obediently accept your death for me." Zhao Hai's figure soars into the sky, and a storm of energy rushes out of his body. A long sword appears in his hand at some point, and he goes straight towards Yan Haotian, who can't move or dodge. "Waste, die for me." Yan Haotian closes his eyes, and there is no expression on his blood-stained face, but the corners of his mouth hooks up into a shallow smile. Because he hears the faint sound of hooves approaching. "Great, the miss is here. This way. Haitang can be saved." Puchi. It's the sound of a sword cutting into flesh, but the expected pain doesn't come. The warm liquid splashed onto his face. What follows is the familiar soft body and body fragrance of a woman. Yan Haotian's whole body trembles, and he suddenly opens his eyes, letting out a horrified roar. "Oh!" Close at hand, Haitang's pair of soft eyes look at him, containing a friendship higher than the sky and deeper than the sea. Blood is flowing out of the corners of her mouth bit by bit, and it turns into a torrential spring. Yan Haotian's trembling gaze moves a little, and finally falls on the sword on her back. That sword has pierced through Haitang's body. Just as it was about to pierce through him, Haitang's hand firmly grips it. Yan Haotian feels that everything in the world seems to darken at this moment. He can't hear anything, and he can't see anything. There is only one word, Haitang. 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 The corners of Feng Haitang's mouth slightly curled up, revealing a gentle smile. Yen. Haotian, I said before, in this lifetime, don't even think of leaving me behind, even if you die. Yan Haotian's mouth was slightly open as he watched Feng Haitang bleed more and more. He watched the life in her eyes slowly disappear, but there was nothing he could do. Suddenly, there was a loud bang, and dozens of figures rushed in like lightning. Miss, over here. The transfer soul goo has indeed found the place. Ah! Boss, Miss Feng, there's so much blood. Miss, save me. Mayan's figure flits past everyone like lightning, arriving at Feng Haitang and Yan Haotian's side. Her actions were very straightforward, and she didn't even ask how the two of them were doing. Chapter 674. If they don't use the Shin musician right away, perhaps he really won't be able to be saved. However, when the people of the Immortal Battalion want to carry away the unconscious Haitang, Mu Yan's hand is grasped by a hand covered in blood. Save. Haitang, save. Haitang first. I beg you. Miss. This man's eyes are clearly out of focus, and his breathing is so weak that it's almost undetectable. But why is his will still so resolute? Mu Yan sighs softly, saying in a low voice, "Fine, I'll save Haitang first. But Yan Haotian, you have to promise me that you'll hang on to your last breath and wait for me to save you. Don't forget, the 5 years of master-servant contract you owe me hasn't ended, and what you owe Haitang, you won't be able to repay it in a lifetime." Tears of blood fall from the corners of Yan Haotian's eyes, but his face shows a relieved smile as he slowly nods. Mu Yan quickly turns around, the Tian Mo Qin appearing between her knees. "Bring Haitang in front of me." Zhao Hai doesn't react for a moment, even forgetting to ask why these people suddenly broke into his secret mansion. His eyes follow Mu Yan obsessively, and he doesn't even notice that saliva is dripping from the corners of his mouth. That disgusting wretched appearance is exactly the same as his son, Zhao Tianxiang. Until the melodious sound of the zither resounds, and a spiritual energy that he hasn't felt for decades surges in the air. Zhao Hai's complexion instantly changes. "You, who are you? Why can you use spiritual energy?" He quickly rushes towards Mu Yan, his eyes full of burning desire and greed. A mortal who lives in the Yanwu continent, and is born with spiritual energy. If he were to use this woman as a furnace, watching her under him in pleasure, and absorbing the spiritual energy in her body, what a wonderful taste that would be. Seeing Zhao Hai rushing towards Mu Yan, who is engrossed in playing the zither, the people of the Nether Flame Battalion don't move. They coldly look at the man who is like a jumping clown, their eyes filled with disgust and pity. The next moment, a black figure appears like a ghost. The long black sword slashes down with the force of 1,000 caddies. Zhao Hai's eyes widen, and his body instinctively begins to tremble. Soon, however, a sweet female voice is heard. "Ingmei, leave this person to me, I'll take care of him myself." The momentum of the blade came to an abrupt halt. Ingmei silently retreated, arms crossed over his chest, coldly looking at Zhao Hai, guarding in front of Mu Yan. Cold sweat quietly fell from Zhao's forehead. He realized that the youth in front of him was very strong, so strong that he didn't even have the courage to resist. His footsteps began to retreat bit by bit, wanting to escape. However, Ingmei brandished his blade and coldly and decisively blocked his path. Zhao's whole body was stiff, but he could only stand in place, not daring to move. Time passed slowly. Chapter 675. "Miss, why don't you take a rest?" Ru Yan worriedly looks at her somewhat pale complexion. Mayan shakes her head and doesn't speak. Instead, she plucks the strings again. This time, it takes a longer time. He waited from dusk until dawn. Realm of Stars, combined with Saint's benevolence, Yen Haotian is once again pulled back from the gates of hell. Yen Haotian slightly opens his eyes and looks at Feng Haitang. Mayan says, Haitang is fine, she's in perfect condition. A touch of relief flits through Yen Haotian's eyes, then he stares at Mayan in a daze, tears falling from the corners of his eyes. The girl in front of him looks so pale, so haggard, sweat almost completely drenching her clothes and hair. This person is clearly his master, an existence that he swears allegiance to, an existence that he will risk his life to protect. But every time, he can't help her at all, but she has to save him again and again. Yen Haotian slowly raises his trembling hand, clenches it into a fist, and presses it against his chest. Tears silently fall from the corners of his eyes. His lips parted, but no words came out. However, the meaning that he wanted to express was so obvious, so resolute and so unrepentant. Miss, I, Yen Haotian, will be loyal to you forever, never betraying you. Even if heaven and earth are destroyed, yin and yang in chaos, you will always be my one and only master. Slowly playing the echo breath, Mayan's physical strength and internal force are recovering a little. But the consumed spiritual energy can't be restored for a while. However, it's enough to deal with Zhao Hai. After a whole night, the grievance and anger in Zhao Hai's heart have accumulated to the extreme. Ever since he returned from the Shuzhen continent, Zhao Hai has always gotten wind and rain in the Yanwu continent. Which mortal here wouldn't be respectful when they see him, in fear and trepidation? Which woman wouldn't fall into his hands if he fancied her? Which sect wouldn't end up in a miserable state of being massacred if they offended him? But this night, he seems to have returned to the hell of the Shuzhen continent. It reminds him of the days when he was casually shouted at and humiliated by a fat steward of a small sect. Does he want to go back to that past? Could it be that his glorious and wanton life will end here? No. He absolutely did not want it. Zhao Hai glanced at the expressionless Ing Mei on the side, then his gaze fell on Mu Yen, revealing what he thought was an incomparably gentle smile. Today's matter was just a misunderstanding. I was careless and hurt the young lady's subordinate, I can apologize to you. Mayan's fingers flutter, and the Tian Mo Qin spins rapidly in front of her, finally hovering in the air. She raised her eyebrows and revealed a charming but cold smile. If you want to apologize, why don't you choose a way to die? Zhao's face twitched, and his expression suddenly became cold. Smelly girl, do you really think I'm afraid of you? You talk big at such a young age. Didn't you just say that you want to deal with me yourself? Now, do you dare to make a bet with me? Mu Yen gently plucked at the strings and casually said, what do you want to bet? Chapter 676. Ing Mei's face, upon hearing him say, marry me, suddenly became completely cold and gloomy. The Nether Flame army wanted nothing more than to skin Zhao Hai alive. Instead, it was Mu Yen who laughed lowly, and said unhurriedly, okay, the bet is established. Hearing this, Zhao Hai's heart burst with joy. At this moment, he has already determined that Mu Yen is a descendant left behind in the Yanwu continent by some almighty cultivator. There are some people who don't have good spiritual power, but think they are extraordinary, thinking that they are great. Today, he will teach this little girl the principles of being a person. When she loses the match, lying on his body and moaning, she will know what a real strong person is. Zhao Hai resisted showing a proud expression, swinging the strange rope in his hand, and said in a deep voice, little girl, this is what you promised yourself. If you lose, you can't go back on your word, and you can't let your servant make a move. The smile on Mu Yan's face became brighter and sweeter, and she glanced at Ing Mei. Ing Mei bowed. I will obey Miss instructions. Zhao Hai couldn't bear it anymore, and laughed. Good, since that's the case, I will let you experience what a real strong person is. The snaking rope seemed to have a life of its own, whistling towards Mu Yan. Just now, Zhao Hai used this move to easily restrain Feng Haitang and Yan Haoyan. In Zhao Hai's view, Mu Yan is indeed more powerful than Feng Haitang and Yan Haoyan. Her level, at a glance, is already at the pre-celestial stage. But what about the pre-celestial stage? That's just the limit that mortals can reach. And him? He had already successfully refined his body and soul decades ago, and had even passed the Thunder Tribulation. What's more, he still has the magic weapon he brought from the Shuzhen continent, the spirit-locking rope. How could this little girl in front of him be his opponent? Sheng, the sound of the zither rang out. The strong internal force after marriage fluctuated. The next moment, a scene that shocked Zhao Hai happened. When his spirit-locking rope was about to touch Mu Yan, it actually seemed to have touched some insurmountable wall, and directly flew back. The sound of the zither became more and more agitated. Zhao Hai frowned, and reached out to take back the spirit-locking rope. Suddenly, an ominous premonition passed through his heart. He quickly dodged to the side. With a whooshing sound in his ears, his spirit-locking rope flew over like an arrow with a fierce killing intent, piercing straight into the wall. If he hadn't dodged just now, he would have been pierced by the spirit-locking rope. Zhao Hai gasps for breath with lingering fear. Looking at Mayan's eyes, there is no longer contempt in the beginning, but it is slowly replaced by graveness. It seems like I've really underestimated you. Zhao Hai said, but if you think that you can defeat me with such insignificant skills, then you're just a fool talking nonsense. As soon as he finished speaking, his figure suddenly disappeared from where he stood. The next moment, he has already appeared in front of Mu Yan like lightning. This time, Zhao Hai didn't use any weapons. Instead, he clenched his fist and fiercely swung it towards Mu Yan. However, such a simple attack seemed to have stirred up 1,000 layers of huge waves when the fist wind was unleashed. Even the surrounding air was twisted and swept up, as if it was surrounded by a hurricane, unable to dodge. Everyone in the Nether Flame army stood up straight, shocked and worried. Miss! The surrounding pressure made their faces pale, and they could barely stand. Chapter 677. If they were in Zhao's place, they absolutely wouldn't be able to resist it. What about Mayan? Can she block it? Boom! A loud noise. Zhao seems to see a splash of blood in front of him. His face shows a carefree and regretful expression. Such a beautiful body, how many bones would be broken by this punch? It's really a pity. But it doesn't matter, he has a lot of elixirs on hand, at least he can hang on to his life, and then he can do whatever he wants. Zhao's thoughts have just turned, when suddenly the tip of the pen floats to him with a delicate fragrance. He stares blankly at first, then his heart surges with a strong sense of unease and fear. In a flash, he wants to retreat and escape. But he's still a step too late. A sharp pain comes from his shoulder, and then he watches helplessly as one of his hands flies away. Ah ah ah. The severe pain and mournful screams blow away the fog in front of Zhao's eyes. Not far away, he sees a girl in black standing in the wind, her smile languid and charming. The early morning sun falls on her delicate face, so beautiful that it makes people forget whether they're on earth or in heaven. But at this moment, looking at this scene, Zhao doesn't feel the slightest bit of charm, only deep fear and aghast. You, why? Why can you dodge the attack? I clearly should have hit you. At that moment, he even feels Mayan's blood sprayed on his face. But why, in the end, Mayan is still intact, while his hand is cut off. Slender jade-like fingers gently pluck the strings. Mayan raises her head, revealing a careless smile. Did the taste of a floating like a dream feel good? Would you like to have a more wonderful dream? Zhao is absent-minded at first, then his eyes suddenly widen. You used the sound of the zither to manipulate my senses. No, how is this possible? Even in the Shuzhen continent, there are very few musicians who can do this. You're just a mere mortal of the Yanwu continent, how could you? Mayan seems to not hear his roar, still unhurriedly saying, do you know why I didn't let Ingmei deal with you, but did it myself? Zhao clutched his bleeding hand and stared at her in horror. At this moment, his heart no longer had the carefree and complacent feeling of having succeeded in his scheme, nor did he have any greed or desire. All that was left was fear for this beautiful girl. Mu Yan laughed softly, don't be so nervous. I want to do it myself, of course, not because I really want to win. I don't even want to look at trash like you who escaped from the cultivation continent in such a sorry state. I'm going to do it myself because there's no one here who can make you suffer more hellish pain than me. Just now, I was really afraid that you would choose to commit suicide. That would be boring. Mu Yan raises her eyebrows and her eyes fall on Zhao Hai's face. But now, even if you want to commit suicide, it's already too late. Chapter 678. Welcome to the nightmare world, the land of extreme evil in floating like a dream. Zhao Hai fell to the ground, his face calm as he fell asleep. Ru Yan asked strangely, Miss, wouldn't it be too easy for him if you let him die in his dream? Even if it's a nightmare, there's no real pain. Before this thought could be finished, Ru Yan's eyes widened in shock. Zhao Hai, who was lying on the ground, began to age at a speed visible to the naked eye. His hair was white, his face wrinkled, and his teeth fell off one by one. In the end, his hair fell off, his nails fell off one by one, his body was bent, and his bones would break at the slightest touch. The expression on his face was one of fear and despair at all times, as if he wanted nothing more than to die immediately. What's going on? Mu Yan smiled faintly. The nightmare world of floating like a dream is called a dream, but it's not just a dream. It's similar to the great illusionary land. When he wakes up, his soul has already gone through thousands of reincarnations. What he experienced in the dream is a purgatory that ordinary people can't imagine, and he can't die or escape. He can only experience it over and over again until he wakes up after a quarter of an hour. Zhao Hai suddenly opened his eyes, trembling as he tried to speak, but found that he could only make hoarse sounds. He was so old that he couldn't hear any sounds, and he couldn't say a complete sentence. He thought he had broken free from the dream, but in fact, he had returned to the nightmare of reality. His soul was trapped in an old body. Every breath was painful, and he could feel the pain of a fracture when he gently lifted his arm. And he didn't even have the strength to commit suicide. Listening to Mu Yan's narration, Ru Yan and the Nether Flame Army were stunned. Then they thought of the floating like a dream that they had heard in their daily training, and they all shivered. The thought of falling into such a nightmare was more terrible than dying 100 times. Mu Yan condescendingly looked at Zhao Hai, who was drooling on the ground, and sneered, You've defiled so many young girls. Isn't it to stay young forever? Since you're so afraid of getting old, then slowly enjoy the taste of death in your old age. Haotian. Feng Haitang jumped up from the bed, and saw the familiar room furnishings, and, Miss, I'm saved. She touched her chest in a daze. There was no sticky blood or the sword that had pierced through her body. The pain in her body had also disappeared without a trace. Feng Haitang looked at the beautiful girl sitting by the bed, her eyes a little wet. Miss, did you save me again? Where was Haotian? How is he? Mu Yan smiles faintly, don't worry, he's fine. He's as lively as you are. Right now, he's probably handling some matters. Hearing this, Feng Haitang was delighted. Then, he subconsciously looked around, and the joy in his eyes was slowly replaced by disappointment and sadness. Yan Haotian was fine now, but he was unwilling to stay by her side. So, he still wasn't willing to accept her. Even if he really loved her, even if he could die for her, but between the two of them, there was an insurmountable chasm. In the end, they could only be fated but not fated. Chapter 679. Recalling the moment of life and death that she had just experienced, Feng Haitang only feels a burst of sorrow and grievance. She can no longer hold back her tears, pitter-pattering as they fall on the back of her hand. Rather than wallowing in self-pity and waiting for Yan Haotian, that blockhead, to come out of a dead end, it's better to take the initiative and attack. Suddenly, Mayan's soft and sweet voice comes to her ears, carrying a bit of bewitching tone. Feng Haitang stares blankly, raising her head to look at Mayan with tearful eyes. Mayan turns her wrist, and a porcelain bottle appears in her palm, sending it to Feng Haitang. Have you ever heard of the saying, raw rice becomes cooked rice? Take a guess, with Yan Haotian's inflexible character, if he really took your innocence, would he still push you away? Feng Haitang's eyes suddenly widen, her entire person scared silly, little. Miss, what are you talking about? Mayan's smile is exceptionally charming and languid, the porcelain bottle lightly twirling in front of her. Yan Haotian loves you. I think there's no need to doubt it, right? When I had just arrived, his injuries were actually more serious than yours. However, he should have already fainted, but he grabbed my hand and made me promise to save you first, only then would he let go. Just a little bit more, and he really wouldn't be able to keep his life. So, you can doubt everything, but you can never doubt his love for you. Feng Haitang stares blankly, then a blush appears on her cheeks, carrying a sour and sweet joy and sweetness. The curve of Mayan's mouth deepens. Since you're sure that he loves you, then there's no problem with using some radical means. In any case, you just have to make sure that he can become yours as soon as possible. How about it? Do you want to give it a try? The porcelain bottle in her hand twirls again, and is delivered to Feng Haitang. The young girl's bright and beautiful smile has an infectious power that can bewitch people. Feng Haitang, you're my Jun Mayan subordinate, don't you even have the courage to handle your own man? At this time, Feng Haitang's face is already so red that it could drip water. But the look in her eyes becomes more and more resolute. Finally, she clenches her teeth and takes the porcelain bottle from Mayan's hand. Mayan comes out of Haitang's room and heads southwest. As he approached the kitchen, he heard the voices of Ru Yan and the girls from the longevity camp. Great Commander Yan, this is not right. We need to add water, otherwise it will be burnt. This was a young lady from the longevity camp. She was in charge of the meals of the Nether Flame Army. Ha, Yan Haotian, you also have such a day. At this time, Ru Yan's gloating voice sounded, I'm telling you, don't even think about running away. It's all your fault for making Haitang sad, causing her to almost die. You were the one who said that you would wash Haitang's hands and make soup in the future. You must personally cook this porridge for Haitang to eat. The smile on Mu Yan's face deepens. After a while, Yan Haotian came out with a tray, his face covered in dirt. There was a plate of porridge on the tray. Although it looked lackluster, it was his first time cooking, and his skills were not bad. Seeing Mayan, Yan Haotian revealed an awkward expression. He bowed slightly, silently saluting her. Mu Yan stops his movements and says with an indifferent expression, Haitang has already woken up. Hearing this, Yan Haotian's eyes lit up. Even their child, little master, is also the most adorable, most powerful child in the world. I really hope they can get married soon. The girl's laughter and gossiping gradually faded away. The corner of Mayan's mouth twitches. For a long time, she doesn't know how to put on her facial expression. How come she doesn't know that her own subordinates have started to call Di Mingju's son-in-law so smoothly? Yen, did you hear that? The man's magnetic voice whispered in her ear, when will we be able to fulfill your subordinate's wish? Why don't we cook the uncooked rice first? That's fine too. His warm lips were almost on her earlobe as he whispered softly. In the end, Mu Yen couldn't stand it anymore, and she flees. Looking at the place where the girl disappeared, Di Mingju's eyes seem bright and dark. Soon after, the corners of his mouth hooked up into a gentle and determined smile. Chapter 681. Yan Haotian carries the tray into Feng Haitang's room, only to find her sitting on the bed in a daze. Her cheeks are crimson, her expression absent-minded. He jumps in fright and quickly walks to the window, reaching out to stroke her forehead. The rough touch of the big hand makes Feng Haitang suddenly wake up. When she sees her sweetheart so close at hand, Haitang stares blankly, then a happy expression emerges on her beautiful face. Haotian, you're here? Yan Haotian puts down the tray in his hands, looking at her worriedly. He makes a gesture. How are you? Does your injury still hurt? Feng Haitang shakes her head. I'm already all better. There's an unbearable silence between the two. Haotian, with great difficulty, Feng Haitang musters up the courage to speak, but Yan Haotian has already placed a bowl of porridge in front of her. Eat something first, he gestures. Feng Haitang's expression immediately darkens, and she clenches the porcelain bottle hidden in her cuff. Sure enough, Haotian wants to avoid the issue between the two of them. He doesn't want to mention it, doesn't want to make it clear, so he interrupts her. Perhaps when her body is all better, he will try his best to push her out again. He only gives her a light sentence, I'm not good enough for you. No, she absolutely won't accept such an outcome. Feng Haitang clenches her teeth, her mind is filled with Mayan's words, what's done is done. Her state of mind is a mess, so much so that when Yan Haotian cautiously asks her how the porridge tastes, she simply can't taste it. She just nods mechanically. Yan Haotian sees her absent-minded appearance and is a little disappointed, but he immediately raises his spirits, thinking about how to make it more delicious next time. Just then, he suddenly hears Feng Haitang's low voice, Haotian, you should also eat a mouthful, okay? Yan Haotian looks up and meets Feng Haitang's clear eyes in a split second, his mind swaying. Heat rushes to his cheeks in a split second, but his skin is dark, so it's hard to notice. But at this time, his mind is already apaced, completely unable to think. He only knows to obediently open his mouth and take the porridge that the little hand is offering. The hot porridge enters his stomach, but his mind isn't there. He simply can't taste what the porridge tastes like. Suddenly, a refreshing fragrance assaulted his nostrils. Yan Haotian's heart suddenly jumped. When he raised his head, he discovered that Feng Haitang's face was very close. The woman's snow-white skin, as well as her light pink petal-like lips, were right in front of him. Yan Haotian only felt a ball of fire burning in the depths of his body. An astonishing heat flowed through every part of his body and finally gathered at a certain place in his lower abdomen. Haotian. Feng Haitang's hands wrapped around his neck. Her moist and warm breath carried a trace of gentleness that she usually wouldn't show, lingering. Haotian, do you like me? Not only did Yan Haotian eat the draft that was poured into that bowl of porridge, Feng Haitang also ate it. Yan Haotian's Adam's apple bobbed up and down. After a long while, he finally came back to his senses and nodded. Feng Haitang smiled gently, her charming eyes like silk. She slowly lowered her head, and lightly touched the man's somewhat chapped lips. How Tian, do you want me? If you really like me and love me, can you hug me right now? Gulp. Yan Haotian swallowed his saliva. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.